Welcome to the All-Star Athlete Podcast, your guide to mastering the mental game and reaching your full potential.
If you've been listening to the podcast and you've found the episodes to be informative and or interesting, I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast. I will be releasing episodes weekly, so subscribing to the podcast is the best way to stay up to speed on when the new episodes are released and to make sure that you don't miss any of the content. Also, liking each episode, if you have in fact been enjoying the content, as well as leaving any questions or comments that you may have down below, also go a long way in supporting the podcast. So thank you so much for listening and enjoy the show.
Andrew, you're a kids' confidence coach. You've helped kids build up their confidence and become better versions of themselves in, I believe, over 11 countries. Is that correct?
11 and more.
What led you to become a kids' confidence coach in the first place?
It started with just I needed it. So on my road to self-discovery, I think I was maybe 25, 26, 27. And then I started to realize, I don't know who I am. That's a really weird thing to kind of think about after living for over a quarter century. So I was then I went to self-discovery and I learned more about myself and took courses, read books, listened to podcasts. And there was just so much about myself I didn't know. Started traveling solo and all these things. And I got fascinated with the brain and how the mind works and, the thoughts that you have with yourself, the way that you hold yourself back, and the actual scientific terms and studies that go behind all these things from psychology, neuroscience, behavioral science, neuro-linguistic programming, all these different things. I was wow, I didn't even know this stuff existed. I'm why didn't I learn this stuff when I was a kid? Because all my life, I've always tried to be a high performer at something. As a kid, academics, try to be really good at academics. That worked out for a time until high school. And sports, martial arts, everything. I was always pushing myself to what I thought were my limits. But I think if I knew everything I knew now, I would have realized that there was so much more to me if I don't give up, if I push myself and all these things, and how I talk to myself and, how I engage with other people, how to be more present, how to make more friends, getting rid of the anxieties that would haunt me of being really shy or not voicing myself, or when I know something's wrong and maybe I'm being mistreated or someone else is being mistreated, why am I scared to speak up? All of these things, I wish I knew how to handle it right away, and it had nothing to do with my personality. It had nothing to do, there are elements to that, but it's skills. And it's because I weren't taught these skills, I wasn't able to handle these different situations with ease. Instead, I handled it it was just challenging, and maybe I couldn't handle it. And so, therefore, I didn't even handle it at all, didn't approach it. So I lacked a lot of courage and bravery simply because I lacked the competence, the confidence, and the self-esteem to do so. Anyways, long story short, I realized that, I can't change my past, and I wouldn't. It makes me who I am today. But there's too many people that around my age and older, it's I'm in therapy, or my therapist said this and that. I'm okay, so in these days, a lot of people are in therapy, 20 years old. Even teenagers are in therapy these days. And here's what I think. I think if I can change your past and then you wouldn't need therapy, you'd be a happier individual. But I can't do that. But what I can do is prevent that story from happening to our kids' generation. So if I can, what I realized was I didn't create a solution, I created a prevention. So if I can teach you all these things now while having fun, and to you, it's just a fun activity that you're learning, right? It's going to prevent a lot of the, I think preventing yourself from your inner critic, talking yourself out of things, saying you can't do it, or listening to people who say that you can't, right? Or developing negative self-talk because you got some kind of negative feedback from somebody else and you adopted it as your own self-image. Like kids don't know this kind of like language, and because they lack that level of language, they're not able to work on it. They can't develop the skills and use the tools because they just don't understand what is a self-image. They don't understand what is self-talk. Some kids that I've talked to, sometimes they can't even fathom the idea that they're thinking thoughts. I'm like, the fact that you're thinking that you don't have thoughts is literally a thought you just had in your head, and they still don't get it. So it's like, it's a challenge to get these kids to learn everything that we know as adults, because sometimes you have to explain things in their world, metaphors and stories and things like that. So I think the reason why this information isn't mainstream and it's not out there is because it's hard to teach. We get it as adults, and so then what we try and do is get this information to kids as a solution to a problem. That means they already are suffering with the negative self-talk or low self-esteem, low confidence, or so they see a counselor or a therapist. But I think that having a therapist or a counselor works for the adults, but it doesn't work for the kids. Kids are way too self-reflective, and the world revolves around them in their own head. And so if they go see a professional, like a counselor or a therapist, it might work slightly against them in the beginning, because they're like, why am I here? Am I here because there's something wrong with me? Is there something broken about me? But I totally disagree with that approach. I think that we can make it just a fun activity. They can just not fix anything. There's nothing to fix. There's only something to build on top of who you already are. There are things you just don't know. Oh, by the way, there are things that like called a growth mindset. Like, it's not the way that you're born. Literally, you can do anything you want if you work hard. Versus, oh, I'm born this way. I'm born bad at math. I'm born not athletic and all these things. And then it just becomes this story. And then this 7-year-old becomes 14, becomes 18, and is this shy kid, doesn't really put themselves into difficult, challenging situations that'll improve their health, improve their academics, or whatever their like challenge is, or whatever their story is. I'm not an extrovert. I'm not talkative. And so then, because I've even heard, if you don't mind me going on and on about this.
Yeah, please.
Like, there are adults who've come to me and they're like, yeah, because they're coming to me because of their kids. But we start talking and they're like, I was a shy kid too. But then when I graduated high school and I turned 18, I started studying at I went to a different city for college. And nobody knew me. Nobody knew me as the shy kid. So like, I had a chance to like be somebody else. I had a chance to, no one knew. So I just started being more like outgoing.
You can be anybody that you want to be at that point.
Yeah.
Kind of a fresh start.
And so what I explained to her was that, well, it's not like all of a sudden you developed these abilities and you became this extrovert. It's not all of a sudden. It was always there. You just never like practiced it. It was always a part of you. But you lived with this story and this identity that I'm not the kind of person who just approaches people. I'm not the person who is just very talkative. I'm usually to myself. And you allowed yourself to live with that story until you finally had an opportunity to start with a clean slate, right? So what if you could have done that when you were 7? What if you started over at 7 and you just stop putting yourself in this imaginary jail cell that as soon as you step out, you're going to be reprimanded. Someone's going to be like, don't talk so loud, or someone's going to say, why you sound so weird, right? Or someone's going to tease you. You just got to be you, be authentically yourself. But I think a lot of kids have the social anxiety because they have a good reason to. They've received they had some kind of negative experience. And because they're so young, they don't know how to handle it. They don't understand the difference between sometimes negative feedback, constructive criticism, or if I try to reach out and make a new friend in kindergarten or first grade, and that kid didn't want to be my friend. Maybe they didn't even hear you, and then they just kept looking somewhere else, and then you thought you were ignored, right? And in your world, you got all the attention at home, and finally you exit that world and you go into a social setting and someone ignores you for the first time. You think they hate you. You think now you got to like try to make friends maybe, right? People please. Give your stuff away or act a certain way, or you look at other people who are like really popular and they're outgoing, like, man, that person has a ton of friends, so I'm gonna like copy them. What music are they listening to? What clothes are they wearing? What shoes are they wearing? Like, what bad words are they saying? What drugs are they using? It's like, let me copy these people, or these people in the music industry or people in the movies. I'm gonna copy these people who seem to be, who they have life figured out, and then they lose their sense of identity. And then they get lost. They're like, who am I doing this for? Am I doing it for me or for other people? But that self-awareness doesn't come until they start becoming like older, teenagers or adults. So I think as soon as you start going to kindergarten, first grade, anytime you start entering social situations with other kids, and you should be, sports, hobbies, school, that's when a kid is exposed to these different things. And you can imagine, if you don't have the right skills, it's kind of like I used to teach people martial arts. So if, like, let's just say you put your kid in martial arts and you want them to learn self-defense. And what if my approach was like, get in the ring and fight, and I'll teach you, like, you'll learn on the spot. You're unprepared. You go in there, you get beat up, and that's a very painful way to learn. But what if I trained you jab, cross, all right, and I taught you how to defend? What if this happens? You're caught up against the ropes or the cage. Like, what do you do? What is a smart way to? And let's strategize, right? I think that when you build skills, you can have less anxiety for that specific prepared environment, and you don't have to try to survive something. You just thrive, right? So that's kind of my approach, but that's my story of just like, I learned it for me. Then I was like, I wish I knew as a kid. Kids need to learn this. And I researched online. It's not there. It's not in the way that I want my approach, where it's infotaining, fun, and it's just boring. And I'm like, well, I can't really walk away from creating this, because now that I know it's not there, I feel like it's my duty to actually put this into the world, because I don't think I could live with myself if I knew that this was needed and I had the idea and I didn't do it. I would literally be like on my deathbed in the future and be like, when I was younger, I had this idea and I wish I did it, because I saw so many kids suffer throughout my years, and I never created this platform or program. So that's why I started it.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there. So we're going to talk about each one of those ideas kind of one at a time, so that we can kind of unpack each one of those little ideas. But in a nutshell, that's why you decided to become a kids confidence coach.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what I like to do is, because you just talked about kind of making things fun for kids, we're going to make this a little bit fun for ourselves here and for our listeners. So I have some kind of fun pre-game questions. That's a little bit of an icebreaker, get to know you, get to know me a little bit, get to know kind of how you interact with kids and so forth. Okay. Yeah. So the first question that I have for you, or pre-game question, so to speak, is that if you could have any kid-friendly superpower to help kids build confidence, what would it be?
I think that self-belief would be the best superpower. Meaning, like, you could, like, maybe if you had laser vision or if you could fly, like, in comparison to those things, what if it was self-belief, to where, like, if you believed without a single doubt, you could have whatever power you wanted. So with that self-belief, it's like, I really believe that I can fly. And then now you can fly, right? I really believe that I can accomplish this. And then you can accomplish it, right? I think that the biggest weakness is the words I can't. This disbelief that, because every kid has potential, every kid has a purpose, but the only person that can stop them from actually achieving and succeeding those things is themselves. And so a lot of kids talk themselves out of things simply because they make a mistake one time, they fail one time. But if they really believe in themselves and then just do and take action, I think that would be the best superpower in the real world or an imaginary world. That would be the best.
Okay, so while it might be nice to or cool to have laser vision or fly or be invisible or lightning or whatever they have, on these, superpowers of any, Marvel heroes or kids cartoons or whatever, a real more functional answer, what you're saying, is self-belief.
Yeah.
So if a kid is in a situation where they don't believe they can do something, if all of a sudden they could summon up the power of like self-belief, maybe they've got a ring or they've got something where all of a sudden they call on this power of self-belief, and then all of a sudden they're just confident and they believe that they could do it. Like that would be a really great superpower for kids, right?
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of silly, but it's like, but if a child literally believes in themselves, then what can stop them? Like, even if they have a friend that's like, you can't do it, but they believe they can, they'll put in the work. And I think that's what really matters. They'll put the work and the effort to achieve and succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you. Second question. Which cartoon or superhero character do you think would have been one of your best coaching clients, and why? In other words, why might they have needed your help?
A cartoon character that would have needed my help?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of superheroes are cartoon characters. They're flawed in their own ways. I can't, necessarily, I'm not going to put any words into your mouth, but can you think of any off the top of your head that might have needed maybe some self-belief? What superheroes maybe didn't believe in themselves or something?
I think that could be really any superhero. But there's a scene that stands out to me the most in, was it Man of Steel? But basically Superman as a kid, he had like all these amazing powers, but it was like super overwhelming, right? So it's like, hey, wouldn't it be great if I had Superman's powers? But then it's like, you don't really realize, it felt like a weakness to him when he was a kid. And what he really needed was guidance. He needed guidance on how to hone in on all the sounds he could hear all over the world and the things he could see. But when he could focus it and control it. So I think that having guidance and someone actually showing him how to use his powers, and believing that it's even possible, I think that's, if I were to coach the little Superman, that's what I would say. Put some hope in, put that belief into him, and then so he can just go and do it.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And really, I think if we look at kind of the plot of a lot of cartoons or superhero movies, a lot of these superheroes, like, they're flawed in some way. They lost their parents when they were a child, or they have all these powers, but they can't control them, or whatever the case is. They were bitten by a spider and like they feel like they're an outcast, an outlier or something. They feel like estranged, right? Like if you look at all these stories, like a lot of these superheroes from when they were a kid, or just society kind of like discards them as being like weird. So I like the answer that you gave of guidance, right? Because you're coaching somebody, and a lot of these superheroes kind of had to find their way. And again, now that I'm thinking about it, you look at a lot of these stories, they have a mentor or somebody that guides them, right? The butler, or their uncle, or somebody like that, right? That kind of guides them. So I really like that answer. Now, as far as you, right, as a kid, what made you feel the most confident? Both if you can remember back when you were a child, and or sort of retrospectively looking back, what do you think made you feel the most confident when you were a child?
When I was a child, and I'm not saying this is correct, but when I was a child, I think I felt most confident when I was winning trophies, gold medals, accomplishing. I think that's probably when I felt the most confident as a child.
Okay, so how do we maybe translate that into something that could be not necessarily, I don't want to use the word more useful, but like, what do you think would be a good takeaway from that? Like the confidence that comes from winning, or because winning is great. Everybody loves to win.
Yeah.
But how can we make that more serviceable for maybe some young kids today?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I felt the most confident when I was winning, but that was the biggest mistake that I made about confidence. Was I thought that, and this is very common, a lot of kids think that, and it's a fixed mindset. I was thinking that unless I win, unless I'm better than the other kids, then I'm not enough, or what I'm doing isn't enough, or I'm not good at this.
So it's great to win, but
yeah.
how do we make that more functional for kids? Because like you were saying, winning is a lot more of like a fixed or sort of ego mindset.
Yeah.
Because probably when you were losing, you felt the least confident.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
I wanted to quit, actually. So I'm talking about martial arts. I was at a certain rank I was competing in. I was like dominating year after year. And then I advanced up to a higher rank, just almost black belt level, and I started losing. And in my world, I was like, I wanted to quit because I thought I was bad at this. And like in comparison to these other kids who are higher ranking, maybe all this time, the reason why I was winning is because I was going against beginners and intermediate. But once I started going against advanced people, I truly am not advanced. And so that hurt me a lot. It hurt my ego.
Nothing changed about your skill level except the people that you were playing against. So now you were just comparing yourself to somebody that was better, but you were basing your self-worth off of that, even though your ability did not change at all.
Yeah. I was basing my self-worth on the outcomes.
Right.
And it was kind of like, to me, it was like a harsh reality. It was like, man, I really am not that good. This is proof. I can't deny it. It's real proof that like I'm not good. But that was my perspective, right? But something useful for all the other kids, I would say, is that the biggest thing is it's not about winning, it's about learning. There's no such thing as losing or failure. You win or you learn. But when I had someone guide me, because I asked some other instructor, and he was known to be he was a grand champion in some tournaments. So I pulled him aside. I asked him for advice, and then his advice was that don't go into a competition to try and win first place. Go in there to learn and do your best. And I was like, that sounds ridiculous. I've never, what? What do you mean don't go in there to win and just go in there to learn? He's like, yeah, go in there to learn, because that's the most important part of competing is learning. I was like, huh. Okay. And I sat on that and I adopted that mindset. And funny enough, whenever I focused on that, I started winning.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
More likely to win, certainly, when you're less fixated on the outcome.
Yeah. You're focused more, and you can let go, right? You're letting go of the pressure that is on you. And you're just so focused on improvement and getting better and better and better. And so therefore, when you actually go and compete, the mindset is like, you're not battling yourself so much, because the pressure isn't so hard. You're not being so hard on yourself. And you can really shine, and you can let all the practice and the hard work really pay off. So yeah, you got to work hard, but you got to also focus on something that isn't so finite, but something more infinite, such as becoming a better version of yourself. And that value really is more important than the outcomes.
Okay. Excellent. On to the next question here. If your coaching style, you specifically, were a character from a kid's TV show, who would you be?
I couldn't really think of this one.
I'll give you a couple examples, and you can pick from one of them.
Sure.
Or you can just, because maybe you're kind of drawing a blank here. Like, are you Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls, and you're just like super like sweet and bubbly and encouraging and happy all the time? Or are you SpongeBob SquarePants, where you're just goofy and silly and always positive and optimistic, or somebody else?
Yeah, I think I change characters a lot. When I film my content for the kids, there are moments where, I can be like SpongeBob, where it's just like goofy, funny. I'm making you laugh. I said something so ridiculous. And then, and sometimes I'll play the character of like Patrick, and just like, just kind of a little bit like on the lower end of the IQ, and just say some really funny, weird things. And then sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, who's an assertive character who's pretty serious.
I mean, Buttercup from Powerpuff Girls again. I like them because there's three of them, right? You got Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. Buttercup is the one that wears the green outfit.
Oh,
and she's the one that's like more intense, more serious, like kick your ass, like stop screwing around, girls.
Yeah.
Like more to the point, like, intense.
I would say sometimes on a very small level, I would probably be that character, because there are sometimes topics that I talk about and I'm just like, I'm trying to demonstrate to the kids, like, be playful, be yourself, have fun. But there are also times when Mr. Coach Andrew is serious, and I think sometimes it's just important to have a balance of everything. Kids need to see an example of all the above, like the strong, serious, assertive, but funny. I think sometimes I think kids emulate who they watch a lot. So I think it's important to shift through those different characters, because I think as adults, we are those different characters a lot, like for work and with our friends and stuff like that. So I would say I switch between like a funny, goofy, and serious, but I'm mostly funny.
Okay. So you're kind of a chameleon, you would say. Not necessarily. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers to these. So I was just, wondering what, personality kind of you took on when you were coaching. So it sounds like you're a little bit of a chameleon.
Yeah, absolutely. But majority would say like stronger on like the fun side.
So funnier, goofier, kind of. Okay, cool. That makes sense. That actually probably, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, speaks to a good way to interact with children.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, last pregame question, then we'll kind of get into the main course here. So this is about music. So what's your go-to confidence anthem? So in other words, a song or a sound that instantly makes you feel unstoppable.
A song, huh?
Like you have like a super hype song that you like blast when you're rolling down the freeway, or when you're working out, or when you're feeling down, something like, Queen, like "We Are the Champions," like that kind of thing. Like, you got any kind of like hype song?
What's interesting? I never really had like a hype song.
Okay.
I would just turn on my like songs on Spotify, and there's like a huge mix of everything. There's some country in there's some heavy metal, and there's some R&B, hip hop, and there's like worship music, and there's like, so it's a mix of everything. And sometimes I listen to nothing. I don't know. That's just me.
So I mean, I'm sensing a theme here, a little bit of a chameleon theme from the carryover from the last question. It sounds like you don't necessarily have one specific hype song, but a bunch of different things depending on the mood.
Yeah, sometimes I will like, you know what? I'm going to start a Linkin Park radio on my way to the
Solid
gym.
choice.
Yeah, Linkin Park, or maybe Red Jumpsuit Apparatus.
Also a solid choice.
Right. System of a Down. And so if I had to lean one way, it's probably something more around the rock, metal, something like that. And sometimes nothing at all.
Okay. All right. That's fair. All right. So let's move on to kind of the main questions here. So we're going to talk about your kids' confidence coaching program. We're going to talk about how we talk to kids versus how we talk to adults in terms of teaching mental performance techniques, some crossover between the two. This is kind of, as we've discussed, a little bit of a collab podcast episode here between my style and your style.
Yeah.
So the first question that I want to ask, so that people can get an idea of where to follow you, find out about your content, is if you would like to take this opportunity to share your social media or any links to any web pages that you have, your coaching programs. I'll include all the links to these in the podcast description.
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of just take the floor and share any of your programs now.
Yeah, I think for parents, you can find me mainly on Instagram. So you can find me. I am Andrew Truong. And then soon I'll have my podcast up and running. So I'm going through scripting it and filming it. So GenA, creating a generation of awesome kids. So this is
Perfect.
for parents. And for the kids, you can send them to my app, Rebel Ninja, which is available on the Play Store and the iOS, the App Store. And soon, the YouTube channel as well. That is going to be partnered up with the podcast. So anything you listen to on the podcast, you can look up the same episode title in YouTube, and it's the kids-friendly version. So that's coming soon. But right now, Instagram and my app, Rebel Ninja.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll include the links for all those, and that's how people can connect with you, Andrew. And if anybody has any questions, wants to follow Andrew's programs or reach out for coaching, that's where they can find him.
Sweet.
Perfect. Let's talk about kids and the challenges that they face today. Okay. So specifically, I want to ask you, what is the biggest confidence challenge that kids face today? Because you're a kids confidence coach, so there must be a lot of things going on with kids confidence, but what is the biggest confidence challenge that kids face today, and how do you help them with that?
I think the biggest confidence challenge a lot of kids face is self-doubt. So, but then there's confidence and there's self-esteem. And so confidence is skill-based. And this is the issue I'm running into, by the way, with like when I'm talking to parents, there's a huge confusion between the two. And so therefore, when they're trying to explain like the challenges their kids are facing, I get like a whole mixed bag of things that like I have to dissect. But challenge is more for confidence, I would say, is self-belief that they can do something, like maybe trying out a soccer for the first time or trying a musical instrument. But then their self-esteem, like maybe they were bullied or they were teased. So I would say two things: not believing in themselves and what they can achieve. And the other one is about their self-image, where they feel they're not enough, or there's something about them, the way they physically look, that they don't like. There's something about something they, it's either physical or mental, where they compare themselves to other kids in a negative way. These are the two biggest things: not believing like I can't do it, and there's also I'm ugly or I'm dumb or nobody likes me. Those are the two biggest things.
So would you say that both of those sort of boil down into like comparison mindset?
I would say a lot of that boils down to like an umbrella that covers both. I would say is a fixed mindset.
Okay. And could you briefly explain what a fixed mindset means for our listeners?
Yeah. It basically, I think for parents, I think a lot of them hear this a lot. It's or they see this a lot, is unless, and it's coming from like a kid's perspective, unless I'm perfect at it, unless I'm flawless at it, unless I'm better than the other kids at it, I'm not enough, right? It would show up in ways where it's like, they might even say, oh, I really want to try this one thing. And then maybe they show up to the practice, they drive up to it and they're like, I changed my mind. Oh, my stomach hurts. I can't go. And it's this avoidance of this anxiety that they might fail, or they might make a mistake, or they might embarrass themselves, or nobody will like them, like socially, right? So that's how it usually shows up. But a fixed mindset is just believing that when I was born, I had all of this, and this is who I am. There's nothing you can change about how social I am, or how people will like me, or if I'm going to be good at this or not. So that's pretty much a fixed mindset. That's why, and you'll see it in mistakes and failures, and they want to give up right away. It's a fixed mindset. It's this belief that, well, if I put in all my effort and it didn't go well, I gave it my all. So my all is not enough. So that's a fixed mindset.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how you help kids specifically. Yeah. You've got some programs. One of them I want to talk about right now is your ninja type quiz.
Yeah.
I really like the idea of that. I was checking out some of your programs before the show.
Cool, man.
And I think that an idea of a ninja type quiz is a great way to engage with kids because, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later for people that may not know or kind of understand.
Yeah.
In order to really connect with kids, you have to interact with them in a way that's different from adults. They view the world in a different way. They have a lesser understanding of vocabulary and terminology, and they just view the world differently. So you have to interact with them differently. So I like this idea that you have of a ninja type quiz. So first, can you please explain for our listeners what the ninja type quiz is? And second, how do these types of quizzes and questions help unlock each child's confidence?
Oh, such a good question. So the ninja type quiz is actually, it's the DISC assessment, a personality quiz that is really popular and taken in a lot of I think jobs.
Is that an acronym when you say
DISC? Is DISC. Dominance, influence, conscientious, and steadiness. So usually you take the quiz, you find out which letter are you primarily and which one are you secondarily. But we all are all four. But if you try and like get a kid to take this, it's like, this is boring.
Is that kind of like the INFJ test or whatever, the personality type kind of thing?
I think the DISC assessment might be like the grandfather of all these different personality quizzes. If there's 4 results, it probably came from the DISC assessment.
Oh, interesting.
But I've seen all the different types. There's DISC, and then they're in the like FBI and Secret Service training. They call it lion, bear, T-Rex, and mouse, right? And then in like sales, they call it ruby, emerald, sapphire, pearl. I call it fire ninja, water ninja, wind ninja, and leaf ninja. Basically DISC. So dominance is fire, influence is water, what's the next letter? Steadiness, wind, sea, conscientious, that would be leaf ninja. So, and then there's also other ones I've heard. There's just straight up like red, blue, green, and then hub. So they're all the same. I just rebranded it so it would be a little bit more fun looking. Like, oh, you find out, are you a fire ninja, water ninja, wind ninja, or leaf ninja?
Because that's cool.
Yeah, it is. And they're like, I want to be a fire ninja, And then so they take the quiz and they find out what they are. Like, I'm a water ninja.
So they really must connect with that. And they understand that. And they wouldn't understand this like higher level DISC quiz.
No.
But it's the same quiz, but it's just, lower down to their level of understanding. And it's cool.
Yeah, it's just made more fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do these type of quizzes help unlock each child's confidence?
So a big part of like self-confidence is knowing yourself, because how do you have self-confidence without really knowing who you are? And so when you learn more about yourself, you're learning what is your identity, right? So basically, when you learn more about who you are building more of your truth, the truth about who you are. So the truth is, maybe if you're a fire ninja, you notice that you tend to be pretty competitive. When you play video games with your brother and sister, maybe you get really mad when you lose. Or you really care about winning so much, not just because you want to be good at it, just because you hate losing. Right? And maybe that resonates with you, right? And you tend to be more leader and assertive, and those tend to be like things that you kind of excel at naturally, and you don't understand why some people don't. But then some of the things that you're not good at is knowing how people feel. You might say what's on your mind and not realize that it hurts somebody's feelings, and you don't understand why. Look, I'm just telling you just straight up, this is what it is. But then you hurt their feelings, they're upset, and you're like, I don't understand. And that's kind of one of the weaknesses of being a fire ninja. Maybe you're a water ninja and you're just like the life of the party. You love being like social and talking to people.
Just go with the flow.
Yeah,
personality.
You hate planning stuff, right? You just like, you don't need to tell me. Don't confuse me. Just give me the simple details, right? But then also, I'm very disorganized. I have a hard time keeping all my clothes in the closet. They're all over my bed. That makes sense. This is a water ninja trait. I'm very spontaneous, but I'm also disorganized. Or maybe I'm very empathetic, but I'm very but people take advantage of me, right? Or I'm super organized and very, very like analytical and strategic, but I struggle with being a little bit more social. I'm a little bit in my world. So when kids realize a little bit more of like what is their dominance, because we are all four, but we lean towards one direction.
Yeah, like a hierarchy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then when kids realize, whoa, wait, so that's normal about my ninja type. So they build self-acceptance, right? It's like, now I know what my superpower is, but then there's also self-acceptance for the things that I struggle with, that I face challenges with. And it's like, it helps a kid not have an inferiority complex where they feel less than mentally or physically, because they always will compare themselves. But to know their truth and that there are things that are just normal, and a growth mindset's important. So they know that they can improve any element of themselves. They just have to also just not kind of like beat themselves up for not being better than somebody at like something, everything.
Right. So in a nutshell, you would say that the ninja type quiz helps children unlock their confidence because it helps them to understand more of like what their personality type is, basically. And they can kind of identify with their strengths and weaknesses and not feel like there's anything necessarily wrong with them. They just kind of understand more about themselves.
Yeah, it's like revealing more of the truth about them. I think that when you have more clarity, there's less anxiety.
Okay. And we've talked about this a little bit as far as how we need to interact with children, and we need to do that differently than adults, right? So I'm sure you're aware of that, but our listeners might not be. You need to change how you speak to children in order to make it easier for them to understand the concepts that we're talking about, which is basically, in a nutshell, that previous question I asked you, right? We're taking that DISC assessment and we're turning it into a ninja type quiz, right? It makes it easier for them to understand. Are there any other ways in which you kind of explain complex ideas like self-image or, you know, that voice in your head, like we were talking about, like negative self-talk or that metacognition? How do you explain these concepts to like a 7-year-old?
Okay. Let's start with like self-image, for example. I think that we have to use metaphors and analogies. I think that if I were to break it down, I just thought about this the other day. Like, what is it that I'm doing? Because sometimes because I've worked with kids for so long, it's just like, I forget how I'm doing it. But I think that if we start off with like a metaphor and analogy that we know they understand, and then we go into what we understand, right? So like, for example, self-image. So self-image is not what we see in the mirror. It's how we see ourselves in our mind's eye, right? So every kid has looked in the mirror before. I think the hardest part is like explaining the part where it's how you see yourself in your mind. It's what you think about yourself. That's the hardest part to probably teach. And so my approach is basically like, well, how do you see yourself then? Do you see yourself as pretty, handsome, beautiful? Do you see yourself as likable? Do you see yourself as someone who's enough, lovable by your friends, right? That's what your self-image is. So what was the other topic you said? There's self-image.
Negative self-talk.
Yeah.
So I noticed that when you just used all those adjectives there, like likable, lovable, enough, handsome, beautiful, are you intentionally using all positive frame words there, or are you suggesting to them that maybe they're feeling ugly or stupid or not good enough? Are you intentionally staying away from those words?
No. I think kids need to know the truth. They need to know. It's like, you know, like in Star Wars, you've got the dark side and you've got the Force. But my approach is that you need to be aware of both, so you make the right decision. And if I teach you right, and I let you make your own decision, you will choose what I've been framing as the better thing.
Right. But they need to be aware of both.
Yeah, they need to understand both so that, and they have clarity on both. They're like, oh, yeah, that dark side, that is quite terrible. Like, I get why some people go there. It's powerful. But is power that important to me that I would join the dark side? Or is it my values of helping people? And because I don't want to hurt people, right? So your question before this was...
You need to change the way that you speak to children in order to make it easier for them to understand. So we've got these complex ideas like self-image and negative self-talk. How do you like lessen the vocabulary and the concepts so that a 7-year-old can conceptualize this complex idea?
Yeah, and then do we kind of stay away from mentioning things that are a little bit more like negative? So I would say, and I give them a little contrast. It's like what's better, option A or option B? And
like how do they want to identify?
Yeah, so like, for example, like what's probably a good self-image when you feel like nobody likes you, or when you feel like people will like you? And they're like, a good self-image is when you think people will like you. And then I go into, now, true or false, will everybody like you? Yes. Nope, that's false. Not everyone is going to like you, but that is okay because there's a difference between opinions and the truth. And we go into another metaphor, if you don't mind.
Please.
The sky is blue. Right? Wouldn't you agree? Yeah, okay, that's a fact. It's blue. But what if some kid's like, well, wouldn't the sky look better if it was purple? And someone else, well, wouldn't the sky look better if it was green? So what's the truth? Is the sky purple? Is it green? Or is it blue? Oh, okay, it's blue. That's the truth. But some kids think that it look better at these other colors now, and you think blue is just keep it the way it is. Who's right? Nobody's right. These are opinions. Everyone's allowed to have their own opinion, right? We can think different things, have favorite things, and just be different, and that's okay. First of all, whose opinion about you matters? Other people's opinion or your own opinion? And they're like, my own opinion. But I also phrase it in a way like what I've noticed with kids is that when you give them two options and you let them choose, they feel like they own it more because they feel like they came up with a solution. But if we try and approach it like, look, the right way to have a self-image is to think nice things about yourself. Then it's kind of like, okay.
You're just telling them as opposed to letting them kind of figure it out for themselves.
Yeah, but they didn't go through the process of critical thinking and feeling like they arrived at the conclusion on their own. And they feel like when they arrive to the conclusion on their own, they feel like, well, yeah, this is the right answer. I came up with it, right?
It's a lot more powerful.
It is.
For sure.
Definitely. And then also I've noticed that they tend to choose the second answer and not the first. So then we want to frame it as like, let's just say negative self-talk. So negative self-talk is basically when you say bad things to yourself, like I can't do this, or I'm not enough, they're not going to like me, or I'm awful, I'm terrible. That's negative self-talk. So what do you think is going to help your self-image and help you be a happier person when you say no one's going to like me, or I'm terrible, or if you say I can do this, I can make new friends? Which one's probably going to make you happier? I can do this, I can make new friends. But if I switch the order around,
right? Well, that's social psychology right there. People are a lot more likely, even adults, to if I was talking to you and I said like 5 different ideas, the last one that I say is, when we're having a conversation, is the most likely thing that you're going to pick up talking about. Because it's the most fresh in your mind. Yeah. So you're not really like leading them on. I mean, you're sort of you're clearly doing that on purpose to like lead them to the correct answer. Yeah. Which is good, but that's kind of also a social psychology trick to get them to be sort of more thinking about the most recent thing that you said, which is the most positive thing.
Primacy versus recency. I believe that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I use a technique when I'm speaking to people called motivational interviewing, if you've heard that term before, where motivational interviewing, it's the same idea, the concept that you just talked about, where you're giving the kids, you're basically allowing them to arrive at the conclusion themselves. Motivational interviewing is a style of counseling or therapy in a sense, where I'm basically interviewing you about your motivations for doing things. Yeah. And I lead the conversation in such a way that allows you to arrive at the conclusion that you came up with. Like, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a mental performance coach, and I might be working with one of my clients and they might not know the best way to eat a diet or something, or their best exercise program. And I ask them like, well, what do you think is the best way to eat healthier? Yeah. And they're like, well, probably if I eat more vegetables and I drink more water and I eat more protein. And, if they don't know the answer, I can guide them to that. Right. But they said those words, not me. So now all of a sudden it's not me telling them what to do. It's them coming up with the answer themselves, which is a lot more powerful. Yep. So that's kind of more of the adult version of what you were just talking about, I think.
This is the exact technique. What is it called?
Motivational interviewing.
Motivational interviewing.
Yeah. That's
cool.
That's my understanding of what that concept is.
Yeah. I love that there's a name for it.
Yeah. So as far as kind of moving on here, what is one way that you help kids go from people pleasing to speaking up for themselves and standing up for what they believe in?
Yeah, I think with people pleasing, that one is, there's always the approach of attacking the symptom. But so here's the problem. I think that if we kind of go like, don't give away the lunch money I gave you to the other kids just so you can make them your friend, or don't do, like, there's all these like, don't do this, don't do that, just be yourself. I think that's attacking like the symptom. But I think really for kids, it starts with like the ninja type quiz, learning more about who you are, and then giving them the truth that it's like, okay, so this is you. That's at your core. This is your truth. Don't be anything else. The truth is, not everyone's going to like you. Even if you try to be nice to every single person on the planet, there will be people who don't like you literally because you're too nice. They're like, why is that person too nice to me? They must be fake. And then they don't like you. Or like, that person's so nice to so many people that they like them, and I don't like you because people like you and they don't like me. There will always be someone who doesn't like you. So what's the point in trying to please everybody? Just be you authentically. Then what we have to do is teach kids, how do I do that? How do I just show up authentically? Because I'm a little scared sometimes. I'm a little scared that, well, what if I am myself and then someone doesn't like me, right? Or it just doesn't go well. Or I don't know how to do that. And so it's just like, so then we come up with games like the best friend challenge, where it's like, imagine, like, who's your best friend? Like, every kid has like somebody that they really trust and they're okay with being themselves with, the neighbor or someone at school. Just imagine you're talking to that best friend, Johnny, when you're talking to this new person. What is that going to do? It's going to help you skip the whole, like, I don't know what to talk about. Are they into video games like me? Do they like Roblox? Do they like Minecraft? Or do they like soccer? Or like, forget about all that. You don't talk about all, you just bring your vibe. Just start giving good vibes. Be yourself. Imagine they're already your friend and you're making it easy for them. They're going to feel your warm energy. This is literally the best way to make more friends and to have really fun times. And if there is one person who doesn't like you, it might not just be about you. They might have a bad day. You never know what's going on in their life. So it's kind of like giving this kids this recipe where 90% of the time you will succeed, 10% of the time you won't, versus not trying at all because you're afraid they're not going to like you, or you're going to do everything you can for them to like you. Back to the people pleasing. So knowing themselves and knowing the truth that not everyone's going to like you is another thing that'll set them free from that. And then, well, then how do I be myself authentically? Like, I have a lesson called good vibes. So how do you just bring good vibes? Just be yourself and be playful. That's the energy you normally have when you're with your friends. Just be playful.
So essentially, in a nutshell, you're basically teaching children to show up authentically as themselves and not worry about what other people are thinking.
Yeah. And I wish it was only that simple, though. Sometimes every kid they struggle with it a little different. And so sometimes you kind of have to understand, well, how does the kid struggle specifically? Sometimes they're just struggling with, like, I get it. I have to be myself, but it's just like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to talk about, right? And so I break down the superpower for each of the ninja skills. Like, if, let's just say you are like, you're not a leaf ninja and you struggle with being social. Well, let's apply some leaf ninja skills. Planning. Let's plan a greeting. Hey, what's up? Or hey, how was your weekend? And then have 2 follow-up questions, because questions put you in control of a conversation, by the way. And then, so that knowledge is really important. So whoever is asking the questions is in control of the conversation. It's very challenging to have anxiety when you have control. lack of control brings anxiety. So if you give the kids these like preparation, plan it out with the kid, like, okay, what's your greeting? 2 follow-up questions, just memorize it, and then have an exit strategy. What if it gets real awkward? How do you say, bye, it was nice to meet you? You know? And sometimes just having that plan, and for some people, it's like the water ninja skill of simplicity and just fun. Just let's do the best friend challenge. You don't need anything planned. You just need the best friend challenge. Just go and talk to them like she's Amy from across the street. Oh, wow. I made 5 friends at swim practice today, right? And sometimes that works. So every kid's a little different, and every kid, I think, vibes with a different strategy. But I do my best to try and teach every kid like every possible strategy so they see what works for them, rather than throwing spaghetti at the wall and then see if they can succeed at being social. Because then, if you don't mind me going further into it, it's kind of risky when that happens, because then it might not go so well, and they're like, wow, I'm not trying that again. I'm not going to try to be myself. So we want to make sure they're competent socially too.
Well, they probably also it probably also takes some time for them to understand that these things aren't going to happen overnight. No. And these are skills that need to be developed. And just because they're practicing and learning with you doesn't mean that they're immediately going to be good at it.
Yeah.
So it's actually also kind of funny, because as I'm listening to you explain some of these concepts to me, I'm like, there's a lot of adults that need to learn this too. Like, if we're being honest.
Me too.
Which is, I mean, maybe going back to what you said earlier, why you started this program, because you found yourself in your 20s feeling like you needed to learn these things. But to the point that I just made about adults needing to learn how to do these things, I think your program is excellent. The idea behind your program is excellent, because here's why. If we teach kids how to do this, when they become adults, they won't need to learn how to do this.
Right.
But there's a lot of adults that never learned how to do this.
And then because they never learned it, they're not able to teach it to their kids.
So it's kind of a self-fulfilling, self-cycling, recycling prophecy. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I'm sure we could get into about like parenting styles and, emotional, like generational trauma and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. But that might be a topic for a different day. But there's a lot of that recycled stuff that happens too.
Yeah. I'll add one thing to that before we move on.
Sure.
You can't share what you don't have.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
If you don't have social skills, you can't share it with your kids. If you're, quote unquote, if your story as a parent is I'm just a quiet, shy, introverted parent, yeah, your kids are going to, it's not a personality trait. It's a skill. And if you don't have those skills, how can you share it? So yes, you're right.
I mean, to your point that you just made, that's also a fixed mindset, right? So I'm a mental performance coach, so I'm very familiar with the whole fixed and growth mindset. It sounds like that parent, when they're saying, well, I'm a shy, introverted, person that doesn't really socialize that much.
Yeah.
Well, that's a fixed mindset. That person believes that they've always been socially awkward and can't interact with other people, and other people don't like them. I mean, I used to be one of those people too. In my 20s, I was terrible at talking to people.
Yeah.
Terrible. I was the awkward, weird, creepy guy. Like I couldn't even have a conversation with somebody without them being like, yo, like what? And but through hard work and perseverance and dedication and adopting a growth mindset and talking to a lot of different people and practicing, now I'm excellent at talking to people, right?
Yeah.
Not, check my ego at the door. Like, I'm not trying to be cocky or anything, but most people can't believe that I'm introverted and that I was never good at talking to people, because I have exceptional eye contact and I can hold a conversation very confidently, and I never run out of things to say. Yeah. And I can do small talk and I can do big talk, and I can pivot and I can listen twice as much as I talk, right? There's all these different skills, the motivational interviewing that we talked about. So anybody can absolutely get better at doing something. It's just, it takes a belief and practice in order to do that.
Yeah. That's why I was saying the self-belief is, they'll be the superpower.
The biggest superpower. So there's we're kind of coming full circle here. So actually, speaking of coming full circle to that point, we're about halfway through the circle now. So I want to get into our halftime questions. I got some more little fun 5-pack of questions for you here about, not necessarily icebreakers anymore at this point, but some more fun questions, maybe about your programs, some superheroes, some powers, that kind of stuff. Okay. So, and then first part of this question, correct me if I'm wrong, but is your Rebel Ninja class, is that your flagship program?
Yeah.
That's like your main program. And for example, the ninja type quiz is like a part of your Rebel Ninja class.
Yeah, it's basically kind of like an introduction, so you can kind of get an idea of like my style of teaching.
Okay. If your Rebel Ninja class were turned into a Netflix cartoon, okay, what would the theme be?
I think the theme would be maybe it's a group of kids and maybe there's four.
The ninjas?
Yeah, maybe
Okay.
a fire ninja, water ninja, leaf ninja, wind ninja. The reason why I would want that to be so, because I think no matter who's watching, they'll be able to resonate with one of the characters. And then when they resonate with one of those characters, they'll learn vicariously through that person's struggles, their challenges, the things that they really excel in, and how they approach things in terms of like how they would talk and coach themselves through a challenge, how they would rely on a teammate for help, because asking for help is okay. And
in fact, it's encouraged.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that if I had a cartoon, it'd be about 4 of those different ninja types going through their daily challenges of like, maybe they're in school and they've got activities, maybe some of them, they play music, and it's like all the typical hobbies that kids are doing these days. These 4 characters do them as well. And maybe they have a secret side hustle of being a superhero on the side. I don't know, where they save the city.
No, that would be perfect.
Yeah, they save the city on the side. I mean, that'd be super cool.
Yeah, and I'm visualizing like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
Okay.
There's what is it? The old like the rat. There's like the what's his name? I forget.
That would be me.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I was gonna say Shredder, but no, he's the bad guy.
No,
there's they have like an old, I forget what his name is, but you know what I'm talking about. There's like the old like mentor, like the rat guy, right?
Yeah.
So I'm visualizing you.
Splinter.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Okay, Splinter and Shredder. Okay, Splinter. So good call on that. You would be probably in this Netflix cartoon. I'm going to use that same chameleon theme. You would be like the chameleon ninja, and you are the master, right? You've mastered all the different types, and there's a cool theme here too, where it's like these kids are beginners. You have the fire ninja, the leaf, the water, and the wind ninja, and theoretically, right, you're the master. You've mastered all the ninja types. Right, which is kind of cool, because then the theme is that like these beginner ninjas, they're on a quest to master all the different types, right?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily possible, but we talked about growth mindset and believing in yourself and getting better, and so there could be a kind of an underlying theme here that these ninjas are on a quest to be like you, to master all the different facets, right?
Yes.
I don't know, just made that up in my head. But
You're churning the cogs in my brain right now. There could be a YouTube series.
Seriously.
An animated series.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, maybe in the future we'll look out for the Rebel Ninja, cartoon or whatever it is. Any good animators?
No, I don't.
That'd be cool, though, I think. Okay, next question. What is one fun, confidence-building super tool that every kid should have in their mental backpack?
If I had to pick one, I think it would be anxiety reappraisal. And I'll start off with saying that I think that when kids they have the value of becoming a better version of themselves, and that's what they stick with. I think that one thing that always stops them is fear, because you only have 2 options: it's faith or fear. Do you have faith that this is going to turn out well, or do you have the fear? There's two stories that you play in your head with all your decisions, and it's a bad movie and a good movie. The bad movie is like, I'm going to mess up. It's not going to go so well. I'm going to get rejected. Or it's going to go well. Like, I can do this. And so I think the best tool is anxiety reappraisal, where basically researchers have already found that the symptoms of anxiety, such as the fast heart rate, the sweaty hands, and so for a kid, here's how I would explain it. There's something called the storyteller technique. The storyteller technique means that you are the storyteller of your life. You get to choose how your story goes and how it's told. The only difference between a confident person and someone who's not confident, they tell better stories about themselves. So if you're really nervous about getting on stage and talking in front of a group of kids, or doing your musical recital, or you're on the basketball team and you guys are playing the top team and you're feeling super anxious, right? You tell your story that I'm not feeling anxious, I'm feeling excited. Now, the truth is, scientists have already shown it's the same thing. If I feel anxious, like the heart rate, butterflies in my tummy, and my hands are getting sweaty, it's the same feelings as getting excited. I just have to tell myself, I'm feeling excited. Now I can just think about, what am I excited about? I'm excited that I get to show people what I've learned on this talent show. I can actually like really do my best and show what I've learned. I don't know, or I make a new friend if I go and approach this person at the park, right? So I think the storyteller technique, which is my rebranded version of anxiety reappraisal, this is not a word I'm going to try and explain to a kid, but the storyteller technique, because at every brink of becoming a better version of themselves, a kid is going to face this brick wall of fears and anxiety. It's the video game character that is facing the boss, and you're not going, just because there is a boss, you're not going to just turn off the video game. You're going to try and beat the boss, and the boss beats you, but then you're like, I figured out why Bowser beat me. It's because I didn't jump around and go behind his back and grab his tail. I need to go and do that, right? And it's like, oh man, I try to throw him, but I messed up the technique. I have to use the analog stick and really circle it, whatever. And then you finally beat the boss, and you feel this huge accomplishment. And so really it's that little wall that they face where they decide, I'm going to do it, or I'm going to procrastinate and not do it. I think that helps kids choose faith over fear.
Okay, well said. Next question. What celebrity would play you in a superhero movie called The Confidence Coach? And what would your superpower be?
I don't know. I think the person who comes to mind is probably like Jackie Chan. He's always beating people up, but he's always funny about it.
Okay, well that's perfect.
I feel
teaching people, a lesson in his own way, right?
Yeah, like in Karate Kid, when he's teaching like Will Smith's kid, like in the movie, it was like there were funny scenes where he's having the kids fight each other by like with his cool little moves, but then there was also serious teaching lessons. So I feel like that matches my vibe. I'm like, for the audience to be entertained and to be paying attention to the lesson, I want them to be enjoying themselves and having fun and laughing. And I think that's how kids learn best. So I would say more like Jackie Chan.
Okay, solid answer. Okay, next question. What is a fictional world or universe where you'd love to run a kids' confidence workshop?
Frozen, the first one.
Okay.
I think the thing that I love about the story is, like, if I could be in that movie, right, I would tell Elsa, like, how beautiful is it that you have these powers? A reframe, like, oh my gosh, these powers, like, I'm messing things up all the time. And I would just tell her what she needed to hear from the very beginning. It's just like, look at these powers you have. It's so beautiful. It's amazing. You could literally create a castle out of ice. So I can go and so she can go like, oh, you're right. I'm like, yeah, there's some, yeah, I mean, like, don't freeze me, but maybe crack a joke a little bit.
Sure.
Oh, okay, I won't freeze you. But it's like, you know what? I bet you if you can learn how to control this, you could create amazing things. And I think that would solve the whole problem right there is self-acceptance. I love that movie because it's all about accepting yourself. And I think that we could all relate to that.
Okay, good answer. Last question of the halftime questions here, then we'll move on to part 2 of our main interview. So I understand that you have some sort of a confidence accelerator program. Mm-hmm. So first, could you briefly explain what that is? Mm-hmm. And second, if your younger self took your Confidence Xcelerator program, what would you say at your graduation ceremony?
Basically, we go through 3 stages, which is like mindset and identity is the first one. It's like, that's the foundation of you. If you don't have that down, whatever I teach you, it doesn't even matter. If I give you all these tools and techniques in your tool belt, the last thing I want for you to do is be like, yeah, that's not me though. I don't do this kind of stuff. Like, I don't take action. No, this is not me. You just battle yourself, and then it's just like, you'll be frustrated. I'll be frustrated. You get nowhere. So what you need to do, so the first pillar out of the 3 is identity, know who you are, mindset. So you stop getting in the way of yourself. And then pillar number 2 of my program would be social skills. Why social skills? Because you're one of 2 people. Either you struggle with it or you thrive with it. If you struggle with it, something happened. Someone ignored you, someone bullied you, you feel awkward, you don't know what to say. So it's like, what are the social skills that we need so you can thrive? So you learn the truth, which is, what does everybody really want? They want to feel seen, heard, and understood. Don't chase butterflies, okay? So if you chase butterflies, they fly away. But if you build a beautiful garden, the butterflies come. You're that beautiful garden. Are you yet? You're a garden. But is it blooming with flowers yet? That's what we have to build. We got to plant these seeds, build the flowers. What does that mean? That means that you're not there yet. You got to learn things like tactical empathy. You got to learn things like being a question detective and asking questions that are open-ended, listening 80% of the time, talking 20% of the time. So you build trust. So the real fact is, when you learn these skills, you don't question your value. You go to somebody's birthday party, you know nobody. You go to a brand new school, middle school, you know nobody. You're going to know that if one person doesn't like you, it's got nothing to do with you, because you can turn around and add value anywhere you go. It's being someone who adds value into a community, into a social setting. But you can't do that if you're not even that person yet. So that's why the first pillar is your foundational confidence, identity, and mindset. And then now that you are your truth, you're operating in just like who you were born to be, and not trying to figure out who am I? What am I into? And then the third pillar would be leadership. Lead people. Because now when you teach, you learn twice. When you are, because you know this as a coach, right? It's like when you start teaching, and sometimes you're like, so something came to you so intuitively, and then you got to teach it, and you're like, I don't know why you don't get it. Like, even if I try to do that wrong on purpose, I wouldn't be able to do it the way you just did it, you know? And so whenever you have to teach something, you learn it twice, right? And sometimes you got to break something down that you really understood. But when you did it, you really understood it even better. So the real truth is, you're going to start looking at your friends and other people, and you're going to start seeing yourself in them. The things that you struggled with, like you were shy once and you didn't know how to talk to people, and now you have a friend who's going through the same thing. You can teach them the best friend challenge, the compliment challenge. You can show them how to do it, and that improves your confidence. You become a higher level version of yourself because you taught it. So if you really want to continue your self-improvement journey, teach and lead. And leading it's not something that you were born with. You don't wait around for it. You start doing it, and that's what makes you a leader. But it's not like bossy. It's like you have to have the right heart posture. So that's like my program. It's like, who are you? Over 70% of the world is filled with people. Learn how to talk to people, because you're not going to live alone by yourself, and you like being around other people. I've never met a kid who said, I don't want to make friends. Every kid I talk to wants friends. And then be a leader, help others, serve.
Okay, and if you took this program
Yeah.
as a younger version of Andrew,
Yeah.
what would you say at your graduation ceremony?
I'd say, hey, congratulations on just getting started.
All right. Very succinct, but true.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a lesson that you teach your kids as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's move on to part 2, the main interview here. Okay. We've spent a decent amount of time talking about your programs and how you would engage with children. Now I want to tie these ideas into mental performance specifically.
Yeah.
Now, there were obviously some underlying themes of mental performance in your ninja type quiz and your confidence accelerator. But I want to ask you specifically, how do you see the confidence tools that you teach carrying over into a sports or performance setting, specifically sports?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is mindset. And a lot of it, you need to have a growth mindset. I think if you're going to succeed in sports, you got to have that growth mindset, and you have to have positive self-talk. So you got to have the skills to back it up, right? You got to have undeniable proof that you can do it. So you have that confidence, but you also have that positive self-talk because you don't want to let anything like plant seeds of doubt in you. You want to be unstoppable with your mind, right? So you have to really have a high self-image. So as a kid, like, I think if you can do that on purpose, like, other people won't know why you're so good at what you do, but you know why. You're doing it on purpose. You're doing it as a kid. You're doing it the same way that elite athletes are doing it. It's and it's strategic.
Okay. Can you share a specific story or example of a child who used the tools that you taught them and saw transformation in sports or in school?
I've got a kid who does basketball, and his team is fairly good. They typically have more wins. Every time I talk to him, it sounds like they're winning, right? So
and what does this kid struggle with specifically? Why did he come to you, or why did his parents come to you with him?
In the beginning, it was that the kid was good, but sometimes it would be like he wouldn't take the shot, right? Or you pass the ball, but the parents know you can take the shot, right? And so I think that in sports, sometimes it's kind of like knowing that you're truly capable. And also, I think the other thing was when the parents are watching at the game, oh, it's hard. It's like, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to disappoint them. And I don't want to disappoint my team, my teammates, because we practice all the time, and this is a very important game. I don't want to let them down and make a mistake. Those things mess with you. And then how do you perform at your best when you have all these things on your mind, when you've got to observe everything else in the game, right? And you have to be so present. But if you're not present, you can't perform the way you practiced. And I think that's the hardest part for a lot of anything sport related or anything performance related, is performing the way that you practiced, because there's a lot of like other thoughts that come up.
So you were able to work with this child and help them focus on more of the process and the game itself, and less about what their parents were thinking and what their teammates were thinking and what the outcome is. Your programs were transformative for this child. Yeah.
And it's like, although I don't work on sports related topics like specifically, like the confidence lessons, they indirectly affect on purpose, because every kid's like into different stuff. And a lot of my training's like pre-recorded, but a lot of the lessons, they go into that. And then I also I work with some of these kids one-on-one too. So usually it's a combination of, here's the basic principle, here's the lesson. And then if I can talk to the kid on like Zoom or something like that, then I can actually make it more tailored specifically to them.
Okay. A lot of coaches and parents want to build confident athletes, right? A lot of kids play youth sports. I know we're not necessarily here to talk specifically about sports, but because we're kind of carrying over some of the concept ideas to athletics, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of coaches and parents want to build confident athletes. Yeah. Right? Why wouldn't they, right? But sometimes their approach backfires.
Ooh.
Okay. What's something well-meaning that adults should stop doing if they want to truly help their kids develop confidence?
Praising the results instead of praising the efforts. There was this study done, I think it was Carol Dweck, and basically in 2 different groups, the kids had to take this exam. They both groups did well, but then one was praised on their efforts, the other one praised on the results. And then when they took another exam, they saw diminishing results in the kids who were praised on their results, because that they found that the kids started to feel this internal pressure of like, what if I don't do a good job again? What if I don't get an A+, right? And then the other kids who never got praised on the outcome, they were just praised on good job studying, good job like working really hard, good job focusing. Those kids did well again, right? Because that's what you can control. That's what you can always control is your efforts, right? You cannot control the outcomes, and that anxiety and that pressure actually diminish their ability to focus and do what they were supposed to do. So when it comes to sports, if you praise the kid on like, great job on winning, and that's the only praise they heard, then they're going to assume that unless I do win this championship again, or unless that I am the first string or whichever, or unless I score the X amount of goals, unless I'm MVP, then I'm not enough, or my parents won't love me. And it's just like, that's not true, but it's just how they reflect on these intentions, these good intentions that we're just trying to get good results, and get the kids to really succeed. But I think that's probably the biggest mistake.
Right. And it's in most cases probably not like these parents or coaches are doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
They're probably well-intentioned, to use the word that you just used, in praising their kids on that they won, right? Because everybody wants to win and it feels good to win. And they're probably thinking that they're doing them a favor. Like, hey, great job. Like, we won the game. Like, yeah, like, excellent job. But to your point about the Carol Dweck study, that can backfire, because even though the coach was, or the parent was well-intentioned in praising the child that they won or that they got a good grade, for example, if we're talking about academics, now that child is internalizing that maybe they're only going to get praise if they win. And so they start to develop a fear of, if they lose, or if they maybe don't get as good of a grade, for example, then they either won't get praise, or maybe they're afraid that they'll get critiqued or criticized or put down or something if they don't win. So I definitely am on board with that idea.
Yeah. That would be the main thing.
Okay. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but with respect to sports, since we're on the topic, is there any way that you would coach kids differently as far as mindset surrounding athletic performance than you would coach adults?
No. I would teach adults and kids the same exact concepts, but deliver it differently.
Just the vernacular?
Yeah, the delivery is the only thing that has to change.
Okay.
And it's literally, so everything that I teach the kids is everything that was taught to adults. And I think really my skill is I'm not like the researcher. I'm not the PhD person. I'm not the psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I don't have a degree in any of these science, fields. I just take the work of these smart people and I translate. I'm a kid's translator. I take this complicated stuff, sophisticated stuff, and I make it easy for kids to understand, and I make it fun for them to learn. And I think that's it's the same stuff, and I teach it to the kids. And there's no wonder that the parents who are watching with the kids are like, wow, that really worked on my confidence. I'm like, yeah, I know, because it's the same stuff that we were supposed to work on. I just made it easy for them to learn. And of course, if it's easy for them, it's easy for you, right? But it's the same stuff.
Okay, that's cool. So I think what you do is you work in sort of more of what I would call the applied field. There's sort of the research side of things, and then there's more of like the application side of things. And I to take that and kind of give you an example of how I work kind of in an applied field as well. Now, I have a master's degree in kinesiology, and I focused on sport and exercise psychology, right? That was my major and my major option, respectively. And I could have gone on to do a PhD, right? I could have gone on to become a doctor of philosophy, and I could have taught these things, and I could have done research studies about mental performance and growth mindset and self-talk and motivation and these sorts of things. But I'm very much like a person that likes to work with people.
Yeah.
I like to be like on the front line.
Yeah.
Right. So as a mental performance coach, somebody that's producing this podcast and somebody that's creating a program that I'm going to, give to people in order to help them develop their confidence and their mindset and so forth, that's applied work. So you don't need an advanced degree in order to be able to do this stuff. You're collating all of this information that exists already, and you're making it digestible for somebody, and you're applying that. Research is great, but research is only as good as, like, can somebody apply a theory into an actual concept and teach it to somebody?
Yeah.
Because if we've got all these high level theories of relativity and, the inverted U theory and the stages of change and all these things, like, that doesn't mean anything to anybody unless you can, like, break it down into a concept and teach it to somebody and get them to actually understand and apply it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're doing, and you teach adults the same way that you teach kids, but I think it's great that you're able to work in this sort of applied field. Would you kind of agree with how I broke that down?
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. It's getting the results out of the kids, because then it's like there's like knowledge is power is one of the things I heard a lot. Then I heard something different when I was in like my 20s. Applied knowledge is power. I was like, that makes more sense to me. I just want to get kids to be able to apply this stuff so they can get the results that they're looking for.
Right. What's a quick confidence tool or activity that you would teach kids so that they can kind of work to reset their mindset after that tough game?
I think just a simple reframe. They just have to keep reminding themselves and reframe their loss. It's like there's no such thing as losing. You win or you learn. Just that. And then I think that already, if they could just say that, then it opens up the growth mindset window of like, well, what could I learn? Either they can figure out what they learned by themselves, or if they don't know, ask the coach, ask their parent, ask the teacher, ask someone who knows more than them, and they'll find their answer. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, is just reframing the loss. That would be the easiest and the fastest. But I think if we could go further, they need to know that they need to focus on their values and not their outcomes. Because, yeah, you're right. It's going to always sting when you lose. Can I tell you a quick story?
Absolutely.
Me and my friend were doing a Spartan race. And
those are tough.
Yeah, they were
a lot of mental challenges going on there too.
Yeah, big time. And my friend, before he was a dad, he was able to climb the rope, no legs, just all our upper body strength. I was just like, how on earth are you doing that? Like, I need to use my hands and my legs and all that. So, and then now, after being a father, he has less time to go to the gym and all that. He's still fit, but he was really hard on himself that he couldn't do it the way he used to. And it affected the rest of his race. The other obstacles, I could tell he just wasn't as like focused or into it. And there's a little bit of like disappointment happening on every obstacle that he had to take the penalty loop for. And then I told him, just like, if you focus on all those things that you didn't accomplish, like it's gonna suck. That's it. I don't know how you can not make it like feel that way. It's gonna sting for a little bit, but then we have to focus on our values, which is what? Gratitude. What could we have learned? What are we grateful for? I'm grateful that we even have working bodies. Like, look, dude, you didn't get injured at the end of the race like you did a couple years ago. Your shoulder's intact. You're injury free. You completed the race injury free. You trained for this, right? You made the time to do it. You showed up for yourself. And these are like all these little wins. And it's like, these are just reminders of like, you're more than just that loss. The loss is kind of like a little brink in the timeline of how long you're here. So I think that's the most important, is like focusing on your values instead of your outcomes. because then you can be like, well, I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful that I trained. I'm grateful that, I'm healthier today than I was the other day. But yeah, so the first answer was like a quick reframe of the mind, but that's like the tip of the glacier. But underneath the glacier, the root of the problem is, where are you focusing? And there's only two options. It's either outcomes or values. But no matter what you choose, what they both share is a little bit of a sting and disappointment, right? But then in the end, one person who focuses on the outcomes will be upset for a long time. The person who focuses on their values will have a shift in attitude after a couple minutes to a couple hours, depending on how big the loss is. But I think that your perspective really matters.
Well said. Whether you're an adult or a child, and whether it's after the race or the competition or in the middle of it, one way that I like to look at that as well is, if you were to be walking down the street and you had a $20 bill in your pocket and you lost $20, okay, that sucks, right? But would you throw away the other $980 that you had in your pocket because you lost $20?
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't throw it away.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's upsetting to lose $20, but you still have the other $980.
Right.
So a lot of the way that people look at bad experiences is they let it ruin like the whole rest of their day or the whole rest of their week. They might have one negative interaction with somebody, and now all of a sudden the whole day is ruined. They might have, one mistake in a sports match. They give up a goal or they give up a home run or something like that, and their performance goes down the drain. Instead of just being able to forget about it, everybody makes mistakes. I'm not going to let this one mistake ruin the whole rest of my match or my race. So your friend, to tie this into your story about the Spartan race, had the rope climb early on. Maybe he didn't succeed.
Right.
And it sounds like he let that ruin the entire rest of his race.
Yeah.
Mentally, physically too, probably.
Yeah,
he wasn't in it anymore because he was down on himself. Instead of just kind of flushing that, being like, oh, well, on to the next one, right? The past is in the past. We can't control that anymore.
Yeah.
And sort of moving on. So that's kind of a way that I like to, and that's basically what you said, is reframing it.
Yeah.
It's how you look at it.
Yeah. And that's the same with life too, isn't it? It's like, there's like, even in just one day, a lot of things can go wrong, and then it can affect you for the rest of the day. But if you kind of take it like obstacle by obstacle or chapter by chapter of your day, and you feel the disappointment or whichever, but you don't let that control the rest of your day, that's a skill, and it takes practice, and it's not easy. And so, and then, you know what, I think, for anyone who's listening, who is a parent, it's good to have those kinds of days, because you want to lead by example and show your child, you want them to see for themselves how it's done, how the parent communicated with, like, let's just say I'm the kid, and then mom said to me, hey, you know what, I'm having a really rough morning right now, so I'm gonna need you to help me out. I need you to do this and that, so that way, go clean your room. I need you to make sure you're ready for school by yourself. And then it's kind of like, and then later we get into the car heading to school, and then maybe she's like, I just sat down for just 1 minute, and I told myself what I was grateful for. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my kids. Even though this stuff in the morning, I got this bad news and all that about work and stuff. But you know what? I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful that we have this home, and I feel good now. So thank you for taking care of those other things for me, because that helps me just focus on my gratitude. And mom feels better now. And if I saw all that happening, I'm like, so that's how it's done, And then I can go back to like, oh man, I'm having a tough day at practice at soccer, and my teammate, who's my friend, said, dude, you suck. What's wrong with you today? And that really hurt my feelings. And I focused on my gratitude, and I feel better, And I walked up to my friend and said, hey, that's not very nice, and that hurt my feelings. But I was able to do it because I wasn't so stuck in just what hurt me. I was able to move forward with gratitude. And so I think that when we experience stuff as adults and we're not perfect, it's good, because then they can see us go through it imperfectly, and then they're like, they don't need to see it done perfect. They just need to see us working on it. And then because they have to go through it to scale down to their little world. Can I share another example with you?
Yes, please.
You know Navy SEAL Jocko Willink?
I'm not familiar with them, no.
Big guy, BJJ black belt. And, you know, if you saw the guy, you'd be like, I'm not messing with him. He just looks big and tough, right? And he has that demeanor. It's a serious looking face. And when he was serving his time as a Navy SEAL, he said he's seen like some of his own comrades just boom, blow up like right in front of him, you know? And that's just like, so that is a tough thing to get through, and you got to continue through your mission. I can't imagine what that's like, seeing your brother just like, you know, be gone just like that. And then he comes home to his little daughter who's having a bad day because of something that happened at school. When you compare what you've been through in the military, right, to this little girl's issues at school, completely different. However, the scale of what he experienced is probably similar to what she's experiencing in her world, right? It's just like the maximum level of anxiety that she's feeling is the same level of maximum anxiety he felt during his service. He cannot compare the two different problems, but he can compare how it feels. And I think that as adults and parents, it's good to go through tough things that you have to work through, because when they go through their little world, it relates to them, even though it's completely harder to them. It's still a learning, relatable process.
Yeah.
So I forgot why I shared that.
I think the point that you're trying to make is that adults and children go through different things for different reasons. Yeah. And if I may kind of interpret what you said there, a lot of adults look at the problems that they deal with, whether it's military, you know, in that case, the story that you were sharing was an example of a Navy SEAL and his brother, like maybe getting shot right in front of him, or whatever the case was. He was at war, right? Mm-hmm. That was a real thing that happened to him, and that was hugely trauma-inducing and stress-inducing, right? A problem for him, right? That he had to work through. Similarly, a child may go through an issue that's just as traumatizing and stress-inducing and scary and awful for them. And maybe it's because they got bullied on the playground. Maybe somebody stole their coloring book. Maybe their lunch money. I don't know. You know, something that's like traumatic to a child. An adult may look at that and be like, trivial, right? Like whatever. Right. That's ridiculous. Like, why are you being upset about that? But to a child, it is a big deal. Yeah. So it's important for adults to treat it like a big deal, because if you treat it like a little deal, then the child is going to be like, this person, whether it's a coach or a parent, whoever it is, they're going to feel like you don't care about them, because that is a real big problem for them, even though it is trivial compared to our adult problems of paying rent and getting fired from our job or somebody dying in war. It's like the scale of the problem to the child as the adult is the same thing. Yeah. So you need to understand that, put yourself in their shoes, I think is kind of what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and also how we approach it, it really does matter. So like, let's just assume that you do your best to do that. And it's like, hey, it's not trivial. You remind yourself it's not trivial. And you don't say something like, it's not a big deal.
Just get over it.
Yeah. Because that definitely doesn't help. But if you try to help the kid, that's still challenging in its own way, because if I could share a quick little tool, it's FFF, feel, felt, found. Like if a kid, maybe someone at school, I don't know, says something like, "You can't be my friend." You could just be like, "Okay, well then don't be friends with them. Just get over it. Make a new friend." That would be not very helpful. But if you say something like, "Hey, you know what? If someone said that to me, I would feel the same way." So that's the first F, is feel. You're addressing the emotional concerns first, so they're gonna be like, "I feel understood," right? And they can calm down now, right? And it changes the chemical just part of them where they can simmer down, they feel better. You try and speak logic into a kid who's emotional, it's not gonna work.
Try and speak logic into an adult that's emotional, it's not going to work.
No, yeah, it doesn't. It's just the way the brain is. The parts that are active is you can't speak to the prefrontal cortex when the amygdala is going off. It just doesn't work. But anyways, and so you do the first F. Hey, if that were me, I would have hey, first of all, I get how that feels, because I would have felt the same way. Right? So feel, felt, or it's kind of, and then I'll just go over the last F, which is, but here's what I found. When people are mean to us, sometimes people are like garbage trucks. They go around, they picked up someone else's garbage and they're walking around with that garbage on them. And so they're having a bad day and they dumped it on you. Is that right? No. But you know what? What do you think we should do? Do you think we should stay mad? Or do you think maybe we should tell them how we feel? Or like, what do you think we should do? Now we're talking logic, right? So yeah, it's not trivial. Don't just kind of like brush it off. I think that we have to help them navigate through tough things, but it has to be done in a way we address the emotion and then help them feel understood. Let them know that they're not alone. Because being alone in the process is an automatic assumption when you're struggling with something, and it's the worst feeling to feel alone, right? And then giving them the solution. So I understand how you feel. I would have felt the same way, or a lot of people felt the same way. But here's what they found. Here's what I found. Here's what mommy found. Here's what daddy found. This is what I do. Or what do you think or you can like do, what was it called?
Motivational interviewing.
Interviewing, right, is even more advanced. You could be like, well, what do you think you could have done differently? Or like, what should we do now? Should we like go tell the principal? Or what are you going to think you're going to say to the kid now? Something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to handle it. And then you're helping them feel understood. And then you're also helping them find a path forward, basically, how they would handle that.
Process it, right? But that's such a beautiful skill when you become an adult and then you are living on your own and then you're like navigating from maybe studying, working, relationships, and it's just like things can feel like the world is crashing down on you real fast. But if you know how to process that information and work through it, it's such a beautiful skill to have, that you're teaching a little person and they might not even know that they're doing it, but it's just how they operate now. That's just how they handle setbacks. And here's my opinion. It's not difficult. It's not challenge. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. We just got to give the kids very not complicated ways to do it.
Well, it sounds like you're an expert at the subject for sure.
Nah, I don't think so. I'm getting better at it.
Well, I think you're doing great things. We're kind of getting close to the end of our episode here.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show and share your expertise and teach our listeners all about your programs. It's a great thing that you're doing, working with kids on building up their confidence. I'm glad that we were able to find a commonality and tie some of those confidence building techniques into sports and athletics, because that's definitely a big thing at whether we're talking about school or social relationships or sports and athletics. Teaching kids these skills at a young age is super important. whether, like you just said, whether they understand that they're learning these things or not, they're developing these skills at a young age, and it's going to allow them to become more proficient at them, if not experts, as they become older, which is then going to kind of, as we mentioned earlier, that sort of generational cycle can be broken, where our adults might actually be proficient at these skills, which will then help future children. So I want to leave our listeners with one last question here before we sign off. If you could leave every young athlete listening with one message about confidence, what would it be?
It's nobody else's fault. It wasn't the way the world treated you. It wasn't the way the coaches treated you, how your friends treated you. It was you. So if you don't believe in yourself, you think you can't do it, that's not other people's fault that they said that you can't do it. It was your fault for listening. What I'm getting to is accountability. If you have a victim mindset and you really think that I can't do it because of this circumstances, the way I was born, wasn't born with money, wasn't born athletic, wasn't born with the IQ levels, whatever. If you always have that victim mentality, then you lose all your power. But when you realize it was your fault, I didn't study, I didn't practice, I didn't get off the couch, I ate those Cheetos, I didn't open that book. I'm also the same person who can choose to put the Cheetos down, to put that workout in, to read that book, to journal my gratitudes, talk to my crush who scares the heck out of me, right?
We've all been there.
Yeah. So when you realize that it was you're the reason why you are where you are, you're also the reason why you can be where you want to be.
So take ownership.
Yeah.
Of your current, of your present and your future.
Mm-hmm.
The past has happened and we might not be able to change those things, but we can change our future by taking control of today.
Yeah.
Choosing who we want to be and owning our confidence.
Mm-hmm. And one really easy line to remember is whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. It's just you against you.
I fully believe in that as well. So, all right, Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your programs. I'm looking forward to great things from you. You got a podcast coming up. You have a lot of great content already. Perhaps a Netflix show in the future.
Maybe. You're speaking life into me right now, though.
Maybe. We get the gears turning. So, any last thoughts that you had before we sign off?
I would say majority of your listeners, they're into sports themselves, or maybe have kids who are in sports. Yeah, I think that I'll leave one last little nugget. I think sports is such a beautiful avenue to allow yourself or your kids to practice all the things we talked about. They can apply themselves. They'll go through anxiety. They'll go through doubts. They'll have to face their fears. I think sports is a great way to see yourself level up, build more competence in something, because even if you don't plan on being a professional athlete, or your kids don't, but everything they learn about how to approach fears and anxieties, how to deal with failures and losses and setbacks, it's the opposite of what you learn in school. School is all about did you get a good grade? Did you get an A+? How was your behavior at school? What was the outcome? And sometimes that tricks us into thinking everything's about outcomes, but it's not. But sports is the opposite. It lets us go against the grain and practice things like you win or you learn. We lost. That's not bad. It's good. You can practice reframes, being more positive, grateful, focus on your values, stuff like that. So if you're in sports, I think that's beautiful. If your kids are in sports, that's beautiful. Just look for those opportunities, because it's such a fun and amazing way to level up and actually see progress. If you don't do sports but you lift, right? And what I love about lifting specifically is that you can measure. I squatted this much. When I do 3 sets of 10, this is the max I can do. And if you follow a program, right, you can jot everything down. And when you do the program again, you can see you were not the same version of you 2 months ago. You can lift 5 pounds more. And that's freaking cool. Like, you know, you can literally measure with numbers. They're saying you can't improve what you can't measure. So I think sports and gym and all those things, and those are all great ways to measure your progress. And progress is what matters.
Yeah. Well said. All right, Andrew. Thanks again for taking the time to be on the show. I'm looking forward to great things from you, and we'll sign off here. I'll talk to you again in the future, and good luck with your program and with your kids, okay?
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for listening.
All right, Andrew. Have a great day. All right. Bye-bye.